Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, March 15th. Hatsqualawin, Queestalukmuk, Laskahopmish, Okameo. We're privileged tonight to be meeting on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Council, motion to adopt our amended agenda. We have added a late business item under item 11 and also a piece of correspondence under 12A1. It's listed as. Moved by Councillor Herford, second by Councillor Finch. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any notice of motion? Seeing none. We have two delegations, two proclamation requests this evening. The first is from Annah McCurry from the Howe Sound Women's Center.
Am I good to go?
You are good to go. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Hi, so yeah, my name is Annah, and I am a specialized resource worker on the sexual assault response and prevention team at the Howe Sound Women's Center. Several communities across BC recognize April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we would like to bring that to our communities in the Sea to Sky corridor, including Squamish, Pemberton, and Whistler. To kick things off this year, we have several events planned already across the Sea to Sky corridor, including work with Howe Sound Secondary, Quest University Canada, Whistler Adaptive, and several other community partners. And we feel that this is a time-sensitive and important matter, given findings that about 1 in 3 women over the age of 15 report having experienced a sexual assault. And sexual assault is the only violent crime in Canada that is not decreasing over time. So we are seeking the support of the District of Squamish to officially proclaim April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Thank you very much, Anna. Councillor Pengill, you'll move that proclamation, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any comments? Well, I'll make a comment. It's so important that we talk about sexual assault, and so many sexual assaults don't get reported. The majority don't. And so it's so important, and I'm so glad to see that you have a range of events to talk to different people, different ages, different sectors, because sexual assault isn't just limited to, Friday and Saturday nights. It can happen anywhere, anytime, to anybody. So really appreciate you bringing our awareness to this, Anna, and the work of the Howe Sound Women's Center this month to bring this to the attention of the community. Thank you so much. Were there other comments? Councillor Pengill?
Just echo mostly what the mayor said, but this is obviously a very important initiative. It's frustrating that the numbers aren't moving the way they should be moving, and so I guess that underscores why this is so important. And thank you very much for doing this work.
Councillor Herford.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this forward. I think it's a very, very important subject and affects us all and our families. And I like to see that the initiative is spread throughout the Sea to Sky, and it's an important message to bring to the forefront, an important conversation to be having, and to sort of destigmatize the victim aspects of it. So thank you so much for bringing it forward, and happy to support.
I'll call the question, Council. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next proclamation request, Ms. Deirdre Syms is here. She's the Interim Executive Director of the BC Epilepsy Society, and they are asking for us to proclaim March 26th as International Purple Day. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. And my position was just recently made permanent. So I'm just the executive director now. They've dropped that interim mark. But the BC Epilepsy Society is a registered charitable organization that serves over 50,000 people in this province with epilepsy and their families. And we are really excited to let you know that International Purple Day for Epilepsy Awareness will take place on March 26th. So Purple Day for Epilepsy Awareness is a time when people in countries all around the world will take place in events and activities to raise much needed awareness of epilepsy. There's still a lot of myths around epilepsy, and we try to separate myths from fact. So we request a proclamation from Mayor and Council designated March 26, 2022 as International Purple Day for Epilepsy Awareness in the district municipality of Squamish. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you very much. Someone like to move that proclamation request? Moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor French. Any comments? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mary Elliott. From personal experience, an important part of epilepsy awareness, in addition to health programs and myths as related by our guest, is personal health and safety and the circumstances of epilepsy episodes. So for members of the public who may be first responders, this is an aspect of creating and raising awareness of epilepsy that's very important and not to be overlooked. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Any further comments? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for joining us this evening, and good luck.
Thank you.
Next up, we're on item 5, consideration of unscheduled public attendance. So this is anyone with a matter they feel cannot wait to be put on the agenda in 2 weeks' time. So that would be *3 on the phone or raising your hand on WebEx in the participant panel. Seeing none, we do have a public hearing this evening. So I will open the public hearing with quite a lengthy statement that I need to read. So appreciate everyone's patience. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act requirements to allow the public to present and to provide submissions to council respecting the proposed bylaw, District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw 2200-2011, Amendment Bylaw number 2864-2021 for 37781 and 37799 2nd Avenue. Everyone present will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or provide a written submission. Please ensure that your remarks are relevant to the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. We are trying to make this hearing a safe space for everyone to voice their opinion without interference from others. We want to ensure that no one is discouraged or prevented from making their views known, whether speaking in favor or against the proposed zoning amendment. Therefore, I ask the members of the public to maintain order and quiet during the hearing. Please do not applaud or interrupt any speech or action of members of council or any other person addressing council. Please note that the public hearing is not an opportunity for members of the public to have their questions answered by staff or by council. Any questions or points of clarification can be directed to staff by contacting the planning department. Members of council may ask clarifying questions following presentations. Council is here to listen and will not debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with the public or each other during the public hearing. Please note that this public hearing is being recorded and web streamed live, and the recording will be posted to the district website. Media are often present at public hearings, and the public should feel free to advise the media if they don't want their picture taken. Up to and as part of this hearing, the public has had the opportunity to make submissions to council. If any submissions were received, they are available for review and comment and have been included as part of the staff's report. Any submissions received after the agenda was published have been added to the electronic agenda and to the electronic public hearing package available on the district's website. Any submissions made during the hearing can be reviewed during the hearing by viewing the electronic agenda. Submissions will be uploaded by staff as they are received. I'll now ask the planning department to outline what the bylaw is proposing. Mr. Daly.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, Development and Subdivision Coordinator with Community Planning and Sustainability. Tonight, I'm here to present a rezoning application at 37781 and 37799 2nd Avenue for a public hearing. At the February 1st, 2022 regular council meeting, Council gave Bylaw 2864 first and second reading and scheduled a public hearing for this evening. The proposal has not changed since the application was given first and second reading. Subject properties are located at 37799 and 37781 2nd Avenue and are zoned light industrial I1. 37781 Second Avenue is currently developed with a single unit dwelling and accessory building. 37799 Second Ave is currently vacant. Neighboring properties are also zoned I1, and a property that shares the laneway to the southwest is zoned MUD 2. This application proposes to rezone the subject property from I1 to MUD 2 to facilitate the development of a 4-story mixed-use building. The development includes 2,600 square feet of employment space on the ground floor, 3,800 square feet of employment space, and 2,900 square feet of outdoor amenity space on the second floor, and 20 apartment dwelling units on the third and fourth floors. The unit mix includes 12 one-bedroom units, 4 two-bedroom units, and 4 three-bedroom units, and is consistent with the inclusive housing policy in the OCP. The project intends to take advantage of the rental density bonus in the MUD 2 zone. 4 of the units, 2 one-bedroom, 1 two-bedroom, and 1 three-bedroom, will be secured as market rental housing, which represents 20% of the residential units and meets the density bonus requirements in the MUD 2 zone. The applicant is committing to constructing the building to a net zero energy or equivalent energy efficiency standard, and that no gas will be provided to any of the units in the building, including the non-residential space. This project would represent the first net zero mixed use or apartment building in Squamish. Parking will be accessed off the lane between 2nd and 3rd Avenue and meets the requirements of the downtown parking standard in the zoning bylaw. The proponent is proposing to provide 5 commercial parking spaces and provide cash in lieu for the remaining 7 required spaces. The proponent has also committed to providing a level 2 electric vehicle charger for each of the residential parking stalls. This rezoning application is proposing 3 minor changes to the MUD 2 zone. The first change is to maximum lot coverage to increase the allowable lot coverage from 60% to 65%. Given the small lot sizes in downtown South, staff are supportive of the increase in lot coverage to allow for more flexibility in development design. Presently, the lower lot coverage in the zone has led to open surface parking dominating the remaining 40% of the lot. Second change to the lot coverage section is to allow for enclosed parking areas to be exempted from lot coverage, provided that accessible open space is provided above the enclosed parking area. This also allows for increased flexibility as required parking spaces can be enclosed, provided that there is activated open space that is accessible to the public above it. This development application is proposing 2,900 square feet of activated open space on the 2nd story above the parkade. Staff see this as an improved option over open surface parking lot. The final change proposed is to remove reference to the industrial use in the height bonus section. There is currently a height bonus in the MUD 2 zone to increase the maximum height to 15.6 meters when 75% of the ground floor ceiling height exceeds 5 meters for the purpose of industrial use. Staff are proposing to maintain this height bonus, but no longer tied to industrial use only. This will allow for more flexibility for future users on the ground floor, but maintain the taller ceiling height should an industrial user be interested in the space. The off-street parking and off-street loading sections previously referenced this height bonus, and these sections have been amended to remove this reference. This application triggers the community amenity contribution policy. The applicant has proposed the following offer, which meets the policy for a multifamily residential or mixed-use rezoning application that proposed less than 50 dwelling units. A cash in lieu of critical amenities amount of $183,340. For active transportation, $12,774 to be allocated towards funding for a streetscape design for 2nd Avenue, and a cash in lieu amount of $6,387 for parks. This proposal meets the CAC targets in the CAC policy. In addition to the CAC contributions, the applicant is proposing the following additional amenities: a commitment to build the project to a net zero energy efficiency or equivalent standard, commitment to provide electric vehicle chargers at each residential parking stall, to employ rainwater retention and reuse technologies in the design of the building, and to provide public art on the east elevation of the building. Should Bylaw 2864 be given 3rd reading following the public hearing, the applicant will be required to enter into a land development agreement prior to adoption of the bylaw to secure the following commitments: the voluntary community amenity cash contribution amount that would be paid prior to adoption of the bylaw, that the project will be constructed to a net zero energy efficiency standard, that no natural gas will be provided in any of the units in the building, that a level 2 electric vehicle charger will be provided at each of the required residential parking stalls, to provide public art on the east face of the building, to employ rainwater retention and reuse technologies in the design of the building, and that 2 one-bedroom units, 1 two-bedroom unit, and 1 three-bedroom unit will be secured as market rental housing in perpetuity as secured by a housing agreement. The housing agreement would be completed with a future development permit application. To inform the community, the project was posted on the district's development showcase and a development proposal sign was posted at the site. A late comment was received that was in support of this rezoning application it was a late correspondence. So at the time that this presentation was prepared, it noted that no comments had been received, but notice of the public hearing was advertised in the March 3rd and 10th editions of the Squamish Chief, and notice of the public hearing was delivered to properties within 100 meters of the development site. Staff recommend that following the public hearing, that bylaw 2864 be given third reading and that the items listed on the screen be addressed prior to adoption. That concludes my presentation, and I welcome any comments or questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Before I go to the public, council, are there any questions that you need answered at this time? Councilor Pettengill?
I just want to confirm how that our language around the no gas covenants are very solid and tight. And the context for my question is don't have any concerns about this proponent, but circumstances change, and if ownership changes and so on, that's just what I want to make sure we're covered. Watching Fortis at the BCUC, they are in the process of framing hydrogen from fossil fuel and all sorts of fossil dependent gases as renewable gases, and then claiming they're putting 100% renewable gas into buildings, and so it's a greenwashing taken to a pretty high level. And so I want to make sure that however we're articulating this, we don't allow that sort of thing to happen in the future.
So through the mayor, typically we require a no gas covenant that says that none of the buildings will be powered by natural gas, or none of the units in the building. This would include the non-residential space, and that's to be confirmed prior to occupancy. There's also going to be a covenant requiring that this building have a 0 GHGI emissions to secure that net zero energy efficiency standard. So I would suggest that would be a pretty solid language to address your concerns.
Just if I could, I guess I would want to make sure that when these are authored, that claiming it's renewable gas doesn't allow you to put natural renewable quote unquote gas in, because it seems they're pushing for a renewable gas that actually isn't. And so that's just what I want to make sure that we have our bases covered there.
It is a no gas covenant.
Okay, and I just want to make sure the language, because it seems that people are playing with words a lot here. So yeah, just being very particular. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Pettengill. Councilor Anderson?
Thank you. Mr. Daly, my question pertains to one of the amenity elements in the proposed for the land development agreement, namely to provide public art on the east elevation of the building. Now, in the report to council, there is reference to a policy in the OCP regarding public art. That policy is dated from 2014. Since then, I believe it was in 2019, we reviewed a related aspect of that policy, and that is the role of the public art advisor, which we assume to be the Squamish Arts Council. In current policies then, public art on public premises and sponsored by the district are addressed differently than on private property. With respect to the role of the public art advisor, and in particular with respect to project tendering and artist selection, my question is, and I understand that the proponent has previously indicated support for this suggestion, that the public art advisor be consulted or partnered with, if you like, for the project tendering and artist selection. And really it boils down to, my question is whether that element of the public art amenity should be incorporated into the land development agreement, that is to specify the role of the public art advisor in project tendering and artist selection.
Through the mayor, that has not been specified in the land development agreement at this time. The requirement is just to secure the public art or the provision of public art in the future development. If this is something the council would like included in the land development agreement, we could have, it could be discussed with the applicant and arranged in the land development agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. The reason why I bring this up is that this is a very prominent location, as often public art projects on private property are. They involve a substantial investment, and they're certainly part of our community's public art programming, if you like, and deserve that extra attention that we perhaps don't have in current policy. Thank you.
I'll now ask the applicant or the representative to comment on the proposed zoning, after which anyone else will be given the opportunity to speak or make a submission. I don't have a speakers list this evening, so I will just be asking people to raise their hands if they're at council chambers, or it's *3 on a telephone, or if you're on WebEx, then in the participant panel, you just click on the hand icon. For all speakers, please approach the podium and start your remarks. Oh, I do have a speakers list. Thank you. Start your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Please note that speakers will be given up to 5 minutes to address council in order that everyone has an opportunity to speak. Details, again, for the telephone and WebEx will be displayed on the screen for those participating electronically. If you've already spoken and you wish to speak again or to provide more or new comments, you can raise your hand again or add your name to the speakers list once I've indicated that speakers will be offered additional opportunities. So with that, first on my list is the proponent, Cameron Cope.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cameron Cope. I live in downtown Squamish, 1270 Victoria Street. I'm the owner of Regen Homes, the builder behind the project, the Dogwoods. Tonight, we've heard an overview of the project, and I just want to tell you a little bit more about the builder and the company and the reasoning behind the project. Yeah, we're living in a climate emergency, yet we still need to support a growing population. The operation of buildings contributes significantly to global greenhouse gas emissions. Building better is a key way in which we can reduce our community's ecological impact. Regen Homes was founded on the belief that through thoughtful design, humans can achieve closer harmony with nature in the urban environment while minimizing our ecological impact. Our mission is to provide people with homes that regenerate the planet's ecosystems while being competitive with conventionally built buildings. People shouldn't have to choose between their values and their wallets. I want to thank Council for your leadership in moving to step 4 of the Energy Code last year. We all know we can't continue to add fossil fuel infrastructure and infrastructure that locks us into emitting greenhouse gases. So that's why we're building to net zero now. And we're excited to participate in building a zero carbon future for us all. So now I'll talk a little bit more about the project and how it relates to the neighborhood. Downtown South is a finely grained mixed-use neighborhood with workshops, studios, offices, and residences. Any new building should add employment space and weave in with existing social fabric and small lot character of the neighborhood as the MUD 2 zoning intends. The Dogwoods is an innovative mixed-use building that complements the neighborhood's creative roots. The first goal of the building is to bring nature into the urban environment. I tried to pack in as many plants and trees as possible. The balconies will overflow with vines and shrubs. The terrace will be planted with 6 dogwood trees that flower twice a year and lose their leaves in the fall and in the winter, letting sunlight through and helping with passive heating. Plants and trees also reduce heat gain and contribute to people's happiness and health. The second goal is to create space for local businesses and entrepreneurs. The ground floor employment space will have double height ceilings to add flexibility for light industrial uses, and the second floor will provide plenty of office space for small firms. Ideally, sustainability-focused businesses are attracted, creating a green business hub. Lastly, the building enhances the public realm. A feature that I'm really excited about is the mural on 2nd Avenue, done by a Squamish Nation artist that has already been chosen. And the mural will wrap around and into the exterior staircase. So you actually climb up through the mural to reach the publicly accessible tree terrace, which in itself is a high quality park-like public space elevated above the street. I've called Squamish home since I graduated over a decade ago, and I've started a family here. On a personal level, I'm committed to the future of Squamish. I live 2 blocks away, and I know the neighbors. The team put a lot of thought and intention into the project to make sure it fits well with the DP area guidelines for Downtown South and our ever-changing future. I'm grateful for this opportunity to work with staff and council on this exciting new project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And well within your time, so I appreciate that. Next on my list is Sarah Ellis. Start with your name and your neighborhood or address, and you've got 5 minutes. Welcome.
Hi. Hi, my name is Sarah Ellis. I'm a downtown resident at 1188 Main Street, just back at 5th and Main. Also a couple blocks from the proposed development. And if you'll just give me a moment to pull up my notes. I'd like to express my support for the proposal and encourage you to give it a 3rd reading. It's great to see a new development bringing additional commercial and residential opportunities into the neighborhood around Vancouver Street, which is still pretty undeveloped and low on amenities compared to the other parts of downtown. I'm also excited to see both ownership and secure rental options being offered in the building, as well as net zero building construction and accessible open space to the public. Overall, I think this project is a great example of the type of development that's needed to support a growing and vibrant downtown, and I'm excited to meet my new neighbors when the building is complete. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ms. Ellis. So that's all the names on my list. So I will just see if anyone in council chambers wishes to speak. Just raise your hand. And if you're participating electronically, it is *3 on the phone, or on the participant panel, just tap on the hand icon. Do you have someone? No.
There's no one online at the moment, Mayor Elliott.
Seeing no more speakers. Council, is there any further information that the planning department might provide in response to any of the comments or questions raised? Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. One quick question through the chair. As part of the CAC package, there's this streetscape design for 2nd Avenue that's proposed. And I'm just curious who leads that work. Is that something that the district takes on, or will that just be led by the proponent?
Through the mayor, that will be led by staff.
All right. Now that I've heard from everyone on the speakers list, it is a requirement that I ask 3 times if there's anyone else who wishes to speak before we can close the public hearing. So for the first time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission, whether here at City Hall or online? And for a second time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? So again, that's *3 or the hand icon. And for the 3rd and final time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? Seeing no further speakers, please note council members are not permitted to receive any further submissions or hear either a proponent or opponent to an application once the public hearing has been concluded. This means we can't speak to you out in the community or receive emails or phone calls on any of any matters in the bylaw until a decision on the bylaw has been made. Any and all communication from this point forward must be channeled through to our staff. If there are no further speakers, I declare the hearing closed. Thank you very much for your submissions. Council, 3rd reading is on our agenda, and I would like to suspend the order of the agenda to deal with that now, if there's no disagreement with that. So we'll move to item 8B1. This is contemplate 3rd reading of zoning bylaw amendment number 2864, 2021. Councillor Race is moved. 3rd reading is moved by Councillor Race, second by Councillor Herford. Comments, Councillor Race?
Thank you. So to be perfectly frank, this one is an easy one for me and easier than many decisions that we face. And I think that is due to, first of all, the uses this property is proposed to be put to, I think are very complementary to that particular area. And secondly, I really enjoy the imagination that's been brought to this project, the imaginative design and the features, and it certainly ticks a lot of boxes as far as our policies go and what we're trying to build in the downtown area, and particularly in that area. A bit of an eclectic mix of things and that nicely come together, and I think this building will fit in very well there. So I'm happy to support this.
Councillor Herford, and then I'll go to Councillor French and Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm speaking in support of the motion. I think this project comes from a proponent that's paid particular attention to sort of what we've been asking for around the council table. We've seen the no gas covenant is just the start. The zero emission is amazing. I'm happy to see the mix of rental housing in there. I do like the creativity with the activated space above the covered parking, and I agree that is much preferred to just open, parking at grade. So I'm really excited to see this project come forward, and I look forward to seeing it being completed. So thank you very much.
Councillor French, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And speaking in favor of the motion, this project represents for me the future of development, and moving it forward is the appropriate thing to do. I believe we'll look back on this project in the future and agree that this building lifted the bar in Squamish, from the net zero status to the number of electric vehicle charging stations and the rainwater reuse. I expect this building will inspire other developers to rethink their construction plans. I support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. I too will be supporting the motion, and in echoing many of my colleagues' comments, I think that when we think about building for the future, this is the sort of building that we're looking for. Not only are we building to a net zero energy standard with a no gas covenant, I think the rainwater retention and reuse system is something that we have to pay particular attention to. The fact that we're providing level 2 chargers for all the residential stalls, I think that goes above and beyond our current policy, but is much needed. And I also really appreciate the attention to detail for the accessible open space above the enclosed parking lot. I think that's a really positive move in the MUD 2 zone. And I think it'll help integrate this building a lot better than having open surface parking lot. So thanks to the proponent for their creativity, for staff on advancing this file, and I look forward to seeing it being built out in our community.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I too will be speaking in favor of the motion. I'd like to highlight the provision to remove reference to industrial use in the height bonus section. I think this flexibility is a good approach, this provision for future potential industrial use, and it may be an important consideration with potential implications for future downtown and mud zone projects. It's something we'll watch. This is a good reference building project in several respects, the design and several aspects my colleagues have referred to, and the quote, building better, to quote from the proponent. Finally, I'd like to address the construction management strategy. This will need careful consideration on the part of our staff and the proponent. This project is located on a truck route, and I understand at least some aspects of the building strategy involve off-site construction, and this is to be encouraged. But given that it is in a high pedestrian zone and on a truck route, that construction management strategy will be important. And I note that one of our correspondents has stated, I won't necessarily enjoy living next to a construction site. So this is something for staff and the proponent to work together and consider ongoing, I believe. Thank you.
Councillor Pettengill, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to support this project. I've been excited about it since I first heard about it. It has set off a little flurry of no gas covenant developments. but this has exceeded our requirements in terms of addressing the climate and other challenges facing us in many respects. And this really is the sort of development that we don't just want to see, but we need to see for the sake of all of our survival and that of our kids and nieces and nephews. And yeah, I'm really so glad this is happening in Squamish, and very happy that the proponent has taken it upon themselves, even when they didn't need to understand the importance of these things and make it happen in this building. So yeah, happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I too will be supporting the motion. I think this developer has shown that he understands the priorities of this council, the character of the neighborhood, and has been able to work with our staff to find creative solutions to actually improve on the mud zoning for that area, which I appreciate. And that's reflected, I think, in the massing and the design and the real sense of being part of the community and providing that open space rather than an open parking lot. And I too appreciate the flexibility of the commercial space to be either industrial or retail. I think, you know, we talk about building for the future, but our future is now. And so absolutely this building sets a bar, and council knows it can now ask for mixed use buildings that are net zero. And I think that's an important piece of information to have in our back pocket, that if it's possible for more builders. So I really appreciate that aspect of addressing the climate emergency and helping us meet our goals here at the district to reduce our emissions substantially in the short term. So with that, I will call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. So council, we will back up and let's take a 5-minute break while we switch over, and we'll deal with item 8A1 for Upper Finch Drive.
I am here. Thanks.
Okay. Welcome back to District of Squamish regular meeting for Tuesday, March 15th. We are on item 8A1. District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw for Upper Finch Drive rezoning number 2811-2021. And we are contemplating first reading this evening. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Daly.
Hello again, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, Development and Subdivision Coordinator with Community Planning, and I will now be presenting a rezoning application at 1050, 1056, 1057, and 1070 Finch Drive, known as the Upper Finch Drive rezoning, for consideration of first reading. The Upper Finch Drive rezoning application was presented to Council at the January 11th and March 8th Committee of the Whole meetings. At the March 8th meeting, Council directed staff to bring Bylaw 2811 forward for consideration of first reading, and noted that there was no concern about the apartment building height being increased to 6 stories. However, more clarification was requested on the size and unit mix of the 2 units that were proposed to be donated to the Squamish Community Housing Society as part of the CAC offer. The slide shows staff summary of the comments provided at the meeting, as the meeting minutes have not yet been ratified. Subject properties are located on the east end of Finch and Raven Drive, totaling 8.5 hectares in area and are zoned RS1. The western portion of 1050 Finch is relatively flat before rising steeply to an upper bench area in the center of the site and transitioning into a steep mountainside further to the east. The properties were developed with single unit dwellings accessed by a steep gravel driveway from Finch Drive. This application seeks to rezone the properties from RS1 to Comprehensive Development Zone 101. The CD 101 zone allows for apartments, townhouses, and duplexes. The proposed housing mix includes 20 duplex units, 18 townhouses, and 194 apartment units between 4 apartment buildings. 2 of the apartment buildings are proposed on the lower portion of the site and would be accessed from Finch and Raven Drives. 2 other apartment buildings, as well as the duplexes and townhomes, are proposed on the upper bench area of the site. The proposed apartment building height is 22.5 meters or 6 stories, whichever is less. The townhouse building height is 10.68 meters, and the duplex building height is 9 meters. A reduced parking standard for the apartment dwelling units is proposed in the CD 101 zone by reducing the requirement by 0.25 spaces per unit type for the for sale apartment units, providing 1 space per unit type for the rental units, and reducing the visitor parking space requirement to 0.1 spaces per unit for 94 of the 194 units. This represents a reduction of 60 stalls for the apartment units and 9 visitor parking stalls for the apartment units from the standard zoning bylaw requirement. The reduced parking standard would result in 990 square meters of green space as opposed to providing the paved parking stalls. Of the 194 apartment units, 32 are proposed to be secured as affordable rental housing units, and 2 are proposed to be donated to the Squamish Community Housing Society. 38% of the apartments will be 1 bedroom, 30% will be 2 bedroom, 12% will be 2 bedroom plus den, and 20% will be 3 bedroom. This unit mix is consistent with the hillside housing policies and meets the inclusive housing policy in the OCP. The duplexes and townhomes will contain 3 bedrooms. The proponent has provided a geotechnical and environmental reports to assess the net developable area of the site. Of the overall 8.5 hectares of the site, 3.9 hectares of the site is considered the net developable area once environmentally sensitive and steep slopes over 40% grade are removed. This rezoning application would qualify for all of the density bonus options outlined in the Loggers East neighborhood plan, but is still under the allowable base density. A density bonus for market rental housing has been included in the CD 101 zone. This would allow for up to 15 additional apartment dwelling units, provided they are secured as market rental and have an average unit size of 1,000 square feet. As these units would be permitted through a density bonus, their construction is not being secured through this rezoning. With the additional apartment building height, the applicant should be able to accommodate a number of market rental units. However, the exact number and location of these units will be determined at the development permit stage once more detailed site planning has been completed. This application triggers the community amenity contribution policy. At the March 8th Committee of the Whole meeting, more information was requested regarding the size of the units to be donated to the Squamish Community Housing Society in relation to the additional for sale gross floor area facilitated through the additional height. The applicant has noted an average unit size of 1,000 square feet for the 20 additional for sale units. This has been built into the allowable density in the CD 101 zone. The applicant has now committed to providing a minimum of 2,000 square feet combined size for the 2 units that are to be donated to the Squamish Community Housing Society, which represents 10% of the additional floor area of those 20 for sale units. The applicant has also revised the commitment from donating 2 1-bedroom units to donating 1 2-bedroom unit and 1 3-bedroom unit to provide a more diverse range of housing units to the Squamish Community Housing Society. Just as a note, the CAC policy target for an additional 20,000 square feet of for sale residential gross floor area is $150,000. The remainder of the CAC offer is unchanged from the previous proposal and noted on this slide. The CAC targets this offer exceeds the targets outlined in the CAC policy, and given this was discussed at council last week, I will not go through this in detail at this time. The developer is also proposing the following additional amenities noted on the slide, which are unchanged from the last council presentation. At the March 8th Committee of the Whole meeting, some councillors expressed concern regarding the requirement to provide commercial space as an additional amenity in the land development agreement, questioning its viability in this location. Staff are recommending leaving this commitment in place to ensure that the space is constructed and preserved for potential commercial use in this development. Should the applicant struggle to lease the space once constructed, the district would normally consider renegotiating the land development agreement to allow for a different use that may be suitable in this space, for example, additional childcare space. The following items will be secured in the land development agreement: the CAC contributions and the timing of their delivery, the childcare space, the size and the timing of the childcare space delivery would be secured. Commitment to build the affordable rental apartment building in the first phase of the development, that all residential units will be powered by electricity, including the hot water tanks, a commitment to build the duplex and townhome units to step 5 of the BC Energy Step Code, commitment to build the commercial retail unit, commitment to provide storage space in the additional storage space in the apartment dwelling units, and an e-bike and car sharing program for the future strata residents. So staff would recommend that if there are any outstanding questions or comments that council feel need to be resolved, that council give bylaw 2811 first reading and direct staff to work with the applicant to resolve any comments prior to consideration of second reading. Alternatively, if council does not feel that there are any substantive items that need to be addressed with the proposal, staff would recommend giving bylaw 2811 first and second reading and scheduling a public hearing for April 26th at 6 p.m. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Council, any questions? Councillor Pettengill?
Yeah, thanks. One, just a clarification. My understanding from speaking to the proponent is that there's no gas planned at all for any unit or any use in this development. So I'm wondering if staff can clarify, is it just a general no gas covenant on everything?
Through the mayor, that's correct. No gas at all in the development.
Thank you. And then my next set of questions are frustrating because the development itself there's a lot I like about it. My concern is the proximity to the Fortis pipeline. And so I want to understand a bit better the risk there, what we understand of the risk. So has Fortis shared a risk analysis with our EOC or fire service regarding the pipeline route yet?
Sorry, through the chair, no.
In the absence of that, what is our EOC and fire service understanding of the risk of that pipeline, or are we waiting to hear from Fortis?
No, I mean, the fire service and emergency management both have working relationships with Fortis vis-a-vis the pipeline that's already there. So we have spoken to Chief Stoner about this. He's of the opinion that we're prepared for an incident. An incident, if it occurs, is we handle evacuation and site management. We don't fight the fire. That's Fortis's responsibility. They have emergency plans in place. All of those are regulated at the provincial and or federal level.
Okay, I'm wondering if we can get a bit more information about that risk or how we're assessing that we're prepared. And part of the context for this, I was at a Fortis presentation where they were projecting their gas usage, and they showed a 50% increase in their BC gas over the next few years. And I asked, well, what is that 50% jump? And they said, that's the load from wood fiber. So as I understood their presentation, I kind of drilled them on this. The amount of gas that's going through that pipeline is equivalent to 50% of the gas from all of BC in an annual basis right now. So this isn't like a regular pipeline. This is big, really, really big. And so I guess I'm concerned that the regular standards don't apply. I've talked to someone who came from the oil and gas sector, did emergency planning, worked with on the industry side, making sure disaster planning and scenario planning was done and so on. And he didn't buy the home he wanted in Valley Cliff because he felt it was far too close to the existing much smaller pipeline. And so I'm hearing from other people that there is a really big risk here. And so I'm quite concerned about how close we're zoning for development along this. And so I'm wondering how we get to an understanding of what that risk is. Fortis is required to do a detailed analysis, and I know they don't seem very willing to share it at this point, but how can we get to some certainty that the risk is okay and that we are prepared?
I think like any regulated industry, we need to rely on the standards that are provided to us via either the federal or provincial government. I mean, we're not in a position as planners anyway to certainly question those standards. We're not experts in the delivery of natural gas through pipelines any more than I am in the regulation of railroads or the airline industry. I mean, those are regulated at a different level. And if we're not relying on those regulations, I'm not sure where we stand.
So with the reading I've been doing, my understanding is that, the sort of analysis that Fortis is required to do will give you the annual risk to loss of life at different distances from the pipeline. And then it's up to a municipality in their emergency planning to make sure that they are not zoning close to the pipeline such to a degree that exceeds their risk tolerance, and to make sure that their fire and emergency services are prepared so that the level of risk, given the proximity of populations to the pipeline, is acceptable to the community. And so I'm trying to understand what is that risk, and what are we saying is or isn't okay?
Oh, we're a bit off topic here, but quite a bit off topic. Again, it's an iterative process. My understanding is that the design and the safety standards are somewhat predicated by what's along the alignment. Fortis is getting our planning documents. They're seeing the sub-area plans, they're seeing the OCP, they're seeing the sort of density that we're proposing along the pipeline, and which already exists along the existing pipeline. So they would need to respond to that input.
Councillor Pettengill, Fortis is appearing as a delegation to council later this month. So you can interrogate them then.
Okay, I will maybe, and yeah, okay. So maybe some questions for Fortis then. Thank you.
Any other questions, council? Councillor Herford, then Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. I had one question around just the way we were speaking about electrical versus a no gas, but we covered that and beyond there. But the affordable housing units, can you just go over one more time the mix that's proposed now? We're still at 2 units, but those units have changed since our last discussion. And I just want to understand the square footage. Are we committing to a square footage, or we're using a square footage as to sort of drive what the units should be, and just where we landed in that?
Through the mayor, the proposal previously the proposal was just donating 2 one-bedroom units with no specification around gross floor area or the size of the units. The proposal now specifies a minimum of 1,000 square feet per unit, or 2,000 square feet combined, and a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom unit. So we're securing a minimum gross floor area for the 2 units, and then the unit type as well. Obviously, there's a little bit of flexibility, or the intention to combine the square footage is to allow for some design flexibility between the 2-bedroom and the 3-bedroom, but that now represents 10% of the additional gross floor area. So it is aligned with that 10% policy in the CAC policy.
Thank you for that clarity. I think just describing it in sort of both ways was, which makes sense from a design standpoint. I just wanted to make sure that we were clear. So thank you for that.
Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Daly, I think you mentioned this, but in terms of securing the residential rental affordable units, in the current bylaw under section 40.000.5, it just secures the 32 apartment units as residential rental, but not as affordable. And as you mentioned, we secure that at a different stage.
Through the mayor, that's correct. The residential rental tenure is a tool that was given to local governments to specify the tenure type. The land development agreement will secure the number of units to be secured as affordable rental units. And then at the time of development permit application, a housing agreement would be brought forward that would also secure them as affordable rental and not market rental.
Okay, and then just a follow up on that in terms of the market rental, the section previous speaks to securing the market rental, but I guess I'm a little bit confused because we discussed adding an additional layer of height to these buildings. And I think part of that was to increase the amount of market rental as well as securing some affordable rental. And so I'm curious why we aren't securing more market rental units at the outset.
Through the mayor, the intention behind this is to allow flexibility for the developer. The additional height will certainly facilitate the addition of market rental units. It's just there needs to be more detailed site planning to identify which buildings and the locations of those units and the future size. The priority was to secure the affordable housing units as that's identified in the CAC policy. So those are secured and being built in the first phase. The density bonus section is to allow the flexibility and the density bonus and the increased height together should allow for up to 15 additional market rental units. Just the proponent wasn't comfortable committing to the specific location at this time until the application has moved further along.
Okay, but that's something that we'll get further clarity on as we get closer to public hearing, for example.
The intention was to leave this as this commitment flexible so that it could be planned out at the development permit stage. That the additional height has been built into the zone that should certainly facilitate the addition of these units. The developer just requested that flexibility.
In follow-up to that, will the extra floor height also allow for more market units to be sold?
The extra floor height will facilitate the addition of 20 units, the 20 units that were previously discussed, so 24 sale units. It will also allow for the donation of 2 units to the Squamish Community Housing Society. And then that's spread out. There's 4 buildings that the additional height is being added to. So then there's also additional height to allow for these market rental units to be accommodated as further site planning is done.
Thank you. And Mr. Daly, on this commercial space, my impression from listening to the conversation is that my colleague wanted that commercial space secured to avoid people walking or people on the hill to have a commercial space. But we're not securing this up on the hill. It can be anywhere. And if I was a developer, I would put it on the flatlands, which has access to more people. So I'm not sure that I still think I know staff think it's the right thing to do, but it's going to end up on the flat. And I believe my colleague probably wanted it up high, which doesn't make sense to me or some of my other colleagues to try and put it up on the hillside. Because anyway, I would appreciate your comments on why we think this is still important to include when there isn't a consensus on council that it's the right thing to make space for.
Staff felt that it was an important item to maintain just to secure the construction of it, and that there could still be flexibility in the future to have it changed to additional childcare space or something like that if the developer was struggling to lease this space. If this is an item that council would like, this is an item that would be secured through the land development agreement, not the zoning. So if council does not want this item included, it can easily be removed from the land as a requirement from the land development agreement.
And while we might secure this in the land development agreement, if it doesn't work out as a commercial space, is there anything that prevents us from looking at both civic uses, commercial uses, like different uses than what's contemplated in LDA? Like, so could we put a community hub in there in the future? Or could we turn it back to the residents because they feel they could use the space better than it being a commercial space? Is there anything preventing that in the zoning as it stands?
Not to my knowledge. If it was given back to the strata residents, that would be a residential use and would be permitted. A community hub, I would have to double check if that's a use that's permitted in all zones, but there's certainly ways that could be addressed through a temporary use permit or something like that.
And the other thing that caught my eye was that e-bike and cars for strata residents. But I thought the e-bike was for all residents, including those in the affordable housing. So could you clarify that?
My understanding is that it is for all residents. It was just probably not the best language to use in the staff report.
Thank you. Maybe we could just note that for future. Councillor Race, then Councillor Herford.
Thank you. So the first time this came to us, we were talking about 5 stories maximum. And we kind of invited, I don't recall the exact wording, but I think we kind of invited the developer to consider 6 floors just because of the location and adding that density. And so from the comments, correct me if I'm wrong, the 6th floor spread amongst these 4 buildings adds 22 units. They will be for sale market units, if I understood your comment. And in addition, 2 units, not necessarily one of the top floor units, but 2 units somewhere in those 4 buildings will be fee simple dedicated to the housing society to be used for the housing society for affordable whatever. So am I correct in saying that? Is that more or less the breakdown?
Almost. There are 22 units total proposed. 2 of the 22 would be donated to the housing society. The remaining 20 would be market for sale units.
So those ones for the society would be a top floor unit from somewhere of one of those 4 buildings.
The location of the units hasn't been specified, just the size and the unit type. So the 2,000 square foot combined size, and that they would be a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom unit.
But of the 22 new units, there's no guarantee that 2 of those particular units will be donated. They could be on the 3rd floor of a different building, for example. But the 22 units could be all market for sale units.
The intention is that all of the 32 affordable rental, not to try and get too confusing here, there are 32 affordable rental units proposed in one building. The intention is that 2 of the 22 additional units, that the 2 units that would be donated to the housing society would be in that building that contains the 32 affordable rental units. And then the additional 24 sale units would be spread out amongst the 3 remaining buildings.
So Councillor Race, there were 32 affordable units, and then we get 2 more in the same building that are donated to the housing society, and then 20 units spread out over the other buildings. And then the potential for market rental as a density bonus.
So we end up with 34 affordable units, 32 of which are rental, owned by the developer presumably or investor, and 2 of them then going to the housing society.
That's correct.
Councillor Herford.
Thank you. The commercial space at 1,000 square feet, how many, if we had to convert that to childcare, which I get that that's sort of an optimistic spin on this, how many childcare spaces could we get out of 1,000 square feet?
This is, or through the mayor, this would be purely speculation without doing a detailed analysis, but I believe the proposal is currently for a 25 space childcare space at around 1,000 square feet, so potentially, but I would be hesitant to say that that is a fact without doing detailed research.
No, that's enough for me right now. Thank you. The car share and bike share are mentioned. Do we have standards for this, and do we have recommendations for their location or the number of vehicles, be they cars or bikes or anything around this space? I'm just curious if what that sort of to quantify what that means to some extent.
I don't believe that we have very many examples of this, but we would be working with the developer. We would secure that this would be a requirement and then would work with the developer on the specifics at the development permit stage to come up with a plan that makes sense.
Okay. And so if I'm hearing the affordable units, sorry, I'm jumping through my notes here. That first building, or the building that they would be in, was a phase 1 of this. Does that still hold true from our earlier discussions, even with the addition of the height?
That's correct.
Thank you. And my last question is EV charging on site. Has that been, where does that stand? Sorry if it's been mentioned previously, I just don't recall.
Currently, the proposal would have to meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw, which requires, I believe, shared access to 30% of the units and rough-in for all of the parking stalls. I would imagine that the electric vehicle chargers will certainly be provided in the townhouses and duplex units, and then likely the apartment buildings would meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Race.
Thank you. At the last meeting, the suggestion was made by me that 2 units dedicated was not sufficient consideration for the extra floor or floors for the 4 buildings, and that there should be 4. And I recognize that the 2 1-bedrooms have gone to a 1 2-bedroom and 1 3-bedroom, but the suggestion was made that there should be 4 in total. And I'm wondering if this was considered by staff or the developer.
Through the mayor, this was considered by staff and the developer, and it was not an offer that was made. The offer that has been presented tonight was the final offer made by the applicant.
All right, I'm not seeing any more hands, so there is a motion to give first reading. There's an alternate motion to give first 2 readings and set a public hearing for April 26th. So council, is there anyone who wants to put a motion on the floor? Councillor French.
Mayor, I'll have a stab at the alternate recommendation, which includes setting a date for a public hearing.
April 26th is, you got to sound confident when you go for the alternative motion. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Herford. Would you like to comment, Councillor French?
Yes, please. Just make sure I'm on reading the correct notes here. Yeah, so this project, in my opinion, has been carefully considered to get us to this point, and I support moving it to second reading and then ultimately to that public hearing so that we can get formal community feedback on the development project.
Councillor Herford, you second. Do you want to speak to it? And then Councillor Race, and then Anderson.
Thank you. This project's been to us a couple of times at Committee of the Whole, and I think staff and has worked with the developer to address some of those concerns early on. I think I appreciate the additional sort of in compensation for the additional height that we're granting. The 2 units and the size has changed from last we saw it, and I'm supportive of that. I do think this is an area that we could have some more policy development on with our CAC policy, but I think for a first go at it, I think it's a good spot, and I hope it sets at least a baseline for where we can go, what we can expect to see going forward with other developments. So I'm happy to move this forward to a public hearing and hear what our community has to say about this. Thank you.
Councillor Race.
Thank you. I actually would have preferred to just go with first reading. However, I'll deal with the motion on the floor. I am concerned that we are not, on behalf of our housing society, getting enough consideration for adding the extra floor to those 4 buildings. That will create 22 market for sale units for the developer. And if it's like any other development I'm aware of, those will be the highest price apartment units in the development. And I don't think that's enough.
No, sorry, it's 20, just to be clear.
No, it's 22 new units will be built on those 4 floors, and 2 will come to the housing society, but they won't be one of those 2. I don't believe. It was back in the other building. So one way or the other, there is a lot of top floor units that are going to be coming going to the developer in return for not as much as we need. We've started a housing society. We are going to have to be able to fight to populate it with units. This is an opportunity which I don't think is overly burdensome on the developer. And so I will not support this resolution going forward, or this development going forward. The choice for me is we either get 4 units out of it or we go back to 5 floors. I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I will also not be supporting the present motion for the same reasons as Councillor Race. I would think that this deserves further deliberation. I'd like to comment on 2 other matters. One, I don't wish to belabor this, but the $50,000 cash contribution to support First Nations programs and facilities, it seems to me this is an issue for our community mandated contribution policy, and perhaps could be addressed in future. The question arises for me as to what precedent this sets and whether programming belongs there, especially while we have facility needs, including for Squamish Nation youth in our community. So that's a small point, but I think it might be raised perhaps in another context of our community mandated contribution policy review. Secondly, I'd like to echo the concerns or comments of Mayor Elliott regarding the commercial space. We have discussed this and whether the lower flat area of Finch Drive may be more appropriate. There are challenges relating to the hillside location, potential convenient access and or parking demand issues for commercial space. The issue of childcare space, our demographics change. They have changed and they will in future. In my neighborhood, we started with a late baby boomer era, and then we had no children in a neighborhood of 100 homes with no children, and now we're back to a childcare needs and an explosion of children. And so this is going to happen, and I think that where I'm going is that we need to give this consideration of retaining the commitment in place for commercial some careful thought. As to alternate uses, including community uses, and perhaps as these children age, youth center, neighborhood hub type functions, perhaps even commercial storage, something that our community also needs. So what I'm suggesting is that we monitor this matter. It may come up again. It has already come up earlier this evening when we discussed the design and flex use of commercial industrial space on the 2nd Avenue project. But we may be revisiting this issue in future development with similar location circumstances. So it's one to watch. And I think that we need to explore this further. Mr. Daly has outlined a couple of options, whether through the land development agreement or rezoning. I think this needs close consideration because we're going to be revisiting this inevitably in other projects. Finally, I'm generally in support of this project as an important one for how we can build on hillsides and challenging terrain, something we're going to be doing in future. And I think this project has done admirably in addressing the challenges of the terrain. And this is an important project in that regard. Thank you.
I have Councillor Stoner and then Councillor Pettendale.
Thank you. Through the chair, I will not be supporting the motion on the floor. I too would have preferred to see this go just to first reading. There is still some level of clarity that I would like to see before it advances to to public hearing to make sure that this is a success through the rezoning process. And so for me, that is in particular around the affordable housing units and the rental units. So my understanding when we talked about adding height, that would come with some level of security around market rental. I'm still not super supportive of the vagueness in this package around the flexibility for the developer to potentially build those market rental units. I also agree with my colleague, Councillor Race, around the donation of the 2 affordable housing units, I think is a great step in the right direction. And I appreciate that it goes beyond our current CAC policy. But that policy is about to go under revision. We have an affordable housing society that we need to start putting units into. I see this as an opportunity to do that. And I don't fully agree with the valuation in the staff report of the 2 units being valued at $1 million. I think that's a market rental and not necessarily a cost to the developer. So I think that there's further negotiation to happen there. And I think that can come either as an additional units for affordable housing, but I would also concede on some level of clarity and confirmation of the number of units that are coming as market rental. I think those are 2 elements that just need to be a little bit more solidified for me in order to move this forward. I'm also not convinced on the commercial space and allocating that 1,000 square feet. I think that it's vague as to whether that will be a successful space for commercial at this time. So either ensuring that those uses are really broad and that there's functionality to transform that space, but also if we need to give that up in order to get more affordable housing, then that would be my priority. Thanks.
Councillor Pettengill.
Just first a process question. If we decline to give this first and second reading, do we have the opportunity to give it first reading?
Yes, you do. No. Sorry. You have to withdraw the motion.
Okay, and the mover would do that.
Or
somebody could propose an amendment and only move first reading.
Okay, I'm going to move an amendment that we only move first reading. If someone will second, speak to that.
Councillor Ray seconds.
Okay, thanks.
Speaking to the amendment.
Speaking to the amendment, I have been a bit hesitant. I spoke a bit to the Fortis thing. I may come back to that in my closing. But I do think there are some open questions, and I would like the opportunity to hear a bit more from Fortis and understand that risk a little bit more before this gets too far down the road. So I think first reading gives us a bit more time to collect some information about the things people have spoken about. Makes sense.
On the amendment, anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Race.
Thank you. And I'm supporting the amendment because I think, as I said earlier, I think I would have preferred just first reading. And to defeat this motion, of course, would toss the whole thing out, which is, I don't think, really not my intention. I'll speak for myself. But I rather would like to see more discussion, I'll say, between now and the next time we see this at second reading. So it gives us that opportunity.
Can I call the question on the amendment and then we can speak to the main motion? Councillor Stoner, I saw your hand though. Do you want to speak to the amendment or will you wait? You'll wait. So on the amendment to give first reading, any opposed? Councillor French opposes. Motion carries. On the main motion now, which is to give first reading, Councillor Pettengill, and then I'll go to Councillor Stoner.
Okay, thank you. I will support the motion as amended. Just want to touch on a few points raised by my colleagues and also raised by me. I think I was one of the people that pushed the most for the commercial there. And what I had in mind is the importance of the neighborhood plan of walkability and a mode shift away from cars. And that to me means that people have employment and service needs close to where they live. I think living in the Highlands, I've come to realize how much of a barrier a hill makes. I mean, it seems like we're fit, it's just a hill, but it is really a barrier that pushes people to cars when they have that option. And so when we combine the hill with all of the parking which is our requirement, I think, you know, it is tough, I agree, to think that commercial would be successful, but I feel like we're not sort of looking at the big picture, being a little more flexible on the parking, looking for more affordable units instead of parking, and having a bit more commercial there so that people can avoid, getting in their cars because they don't want to deal with the hill. it hasn't, you know, listening to the discussion, it hasn't been something I felt like I could push on in terms of more commercial than the 1 unit proposed. But I still feel like even 1 unit is a gathering space for coffee, for groceries, a few things to keep people out of cars. And if we're thinking about it in that way, I think it could and should make sense, especially as the climate crisis ramps up. For me, this isn't a hill to die on, but I just wanted to provide some context about why that was there. I think where I'm a little less flexible is getting back to this pipeline. You know, the other information I'm able to find, like from Sask Gas, which I believe is Saskatchewan Gas, and others, they talk about 200-meter setbacks for pipelines of the same diameter, but half the pressure. And again, this is a massive amount of gas. This isn't a regular pipeline. And, you know, utilities can put pipelines, it seems, wherever they want in Canada. And, you know, too bad for anyone that lives near them. But when something isn't zoned, our tool as a municipality to protect our citizens is our zoning. And that's what we can do. And so despite my very serious reservations, especially because, you know, the pipeline is closest to the affordable units. So the people who are least able to choose where they live because they're desperate for something affordable are going to be the ones that are stuck closest to this pipeline if it goes through. And so I think in terms of equity, that is a real concern. But first reading will give us the time, hopefully, to grow Fortis, and hopefully they will give us some reasonable answers where we can make some good decisions. And like I mentioned earlier, this is quite frustrating because I see here a developer that has paid attention to the climate crisis. They are doing a no gas covenant. They are paying attention to low, you know, close to passive standard. So this is a fantastic building in many respects. The developer has really paid attention to the challenges facing us. The issues of parking and so on are ones that we have created, and the developer has done the best they can. And so I find this a frustrating situation, but not one that we can ignore. So bit of a ramble there. Appreciate the platform, and I will support first reading on this.
Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, just briefly, I won't reiterate my previous comments, but I just wanted to say that I too didn't want to see this completely thrown out. That was not my intention. I appreciate the direction of this proposal and the discussions to date. So happy to see that we've amended that to first reading, and we'll be supporting the motion.
I'll just add my comments. I think, you know, it is an important occasion this evening that we're dealing with 2 projects that are at net zero or will be net zero ready. That's so important, and I appreciate developers responding to the priorities of council, but also the climate emergency. So I don't want to dismiss that. I think that's a really compelling piece of this development overall. I'm not convinced by this commercial space, but I do believe we'll offer commercial space within the neighborhood plan. But also, I think it's a bit of a distraction to say we could eventually turn it into childcare space. When we're designing in zonings, when we're designing childcare in, we contemplate how the drop-off will happen, that the outdoor space is available that's required through the licensing. And so you can't just turn any 1,000-square-foot space into childcare. So I think that's a bit of a red herring. I think if staff want to include that space, then let's be thoughtful about where it is and the uses. Because I think I would, if I was this developer, I'd put it on the flat area. So there'd be more traffic and more compelling for someone to rent. So, so I'd like more clarity on that. I too thought in my comments at committee of the whole that if we were adding a floor, we were looking for purpose-built rental. And we're still seeing that as only the density bonus, which I appreciate. That's part of our neighborhood plan. But I didn't imagine that we would add a floor to these buildings and just get for sale units. I think the 2 units donated to the Housing Society are fair, given that this isn't in our CAC policy and we're never part of the negotiation. And I appreciate my colleagues' efforts at the last committee of the whole to improve or sort of guarantee the size and improve the variety of units. So the 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom, I think, are really important. But I don't think we can keep pushing on this while the society is still being formed. And we've got other developments where we can start to ask for other units. So I think this developer takes us in the right direction. But the place to really explore how many is in our CAC discussions, not through bylaw readings. Like, it needs to be part of an overall picture and balanced with the other needs in the community. So I think what's on the table is fair, but I'm just concerned that we haven't secured purpose-built rental, which I think would diversify the housing form. And I hear that it's coming, but like Councillor Race and Councillor Stoner, I thought we would see more for adding an additional floor. Other than that, I think this is very thoughtfully done. I agree with Councillor Anderson. How we build on hills will start to matter. And so I think this is a really interesting start. I do believe that e-bike and car share are important for the residents in this part of the community. I appreciate the purpose-built childcare space that we already have guaranteed in there. And look forward to this coming back for second reading. Any other comments? Councillor Race.
Thank you. And I didn't comment on the that 1,000 square feet of commercial space, but I tend to agree. I don't think it would be fully utilized in that particular area. Certainly not up in the hill. And if it's going to happen at all, I would tend to agree it should be on the flat and more accessible to the wider neighborhood. The other option would be making it residential. And it's easier to do that before construction starts than after construction's finished. And that may be that we get more utility and value if it was sort of looked at as part of the residential stock for affordable housing, for example. So I'll just leave it at that for further discussion.
All right, seeing no other hands, I'll call the question on first reading. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Mr. Daly. Okay, we're on item 9A1, Federation of Canadian Municipalities International Program on the Partnership for Municipal Innovation, Women in Local Leadership, and I will hand it over to CAO Glenday to provide a verbal update.
Okay, I didn't need IT this time. I'm improving. Good evening, Council and members of the community that are watching. I'm excited to provide an update about what we're affectionately calling as the acronym PMI WIL, the Partnerships for Municipal Innovation, Women in Local Leadership. It's a bit of a mouthful. We were successful in our application with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for this program and have learned that the District of Squamish has been partnered with Zambia as the country overseas that we'll be supporting. The project itself actually includes 5 countries, so Ghana, Zambia, Benin, Cambodia, and Sri Lanka. And there are 2 main core objectives. The first being to increase women's capacity to lead in local governance, and that includes elected officials as well as staff leadership. And then in conjunction with that, to increase a local government's capacity to deliver inclusive and gender responsive services to all citizens in that municipality. Some of the key activities that will occur with this project are listed above. And as I mentioned, it really focuses on leadership, so both elected officials and staff. And then building that capacity to strengthen that leadership and the opportunities and the participation, as well as going out to the community and being able to provide better and more inclusive gender responsive services. This is looking like a bit of an eye chart. It's small, but what we can do is post this model on our website with the agenda. This is the model that the PMI Will project is relying on. So the top outside of the curve or circle says improved quality of life for women and girls, and then women in local leadership. And within that is the why, the how, and the who in terms of this project. In terms of Squamish's partnership, the FCM group has partnered Canadian municipalities to work together and then partner with the international communities. So we've been partnered with the City of Edmonton, which is very exciting in terms of our own learning and sharing with that municipality or that city. And Zambia actually has a local government association. And so that will be the partner that we work with. And within that, there will be 5 municipalities to start within Zambia that will be involved in the activities. So just a brief overview of Zambia. It's a landlocked nation in South Central Africa. They have a national government and a local government. Unlike us, they don't have provincial. And then they have a local government association of Zambia. So what are our commitments? I did have a preliminary meeting with the FCM group. Ultimately, similar to the Jordan Municipal Support Project, our commitments will be in kind in nature, so staff time essentially. And then the tasks that come out of this will be shared among the staff at the district, partners with the City of Edmonton. And then the other aspect of this project that's slightly different from the Jordan project that we're involved in is there is potential for us to commit or work with community agencies that work in the same area around gender, diversity and inclusion and supporting women. So that will likely form part of the work that we do. Here are a list of some of the tasks that have been outlined. So assessing the needs of the municipalities in Zambia, a lot of sharing of information. As we've learned with the Jordan project, ultimately the idea is to build capacity in these international countries or countries overseas. And yet at the same time, what ends up happening is we learn just as much through the partnership. Participating in program evaluation, regular reporting to FCM, and then as well, study tours. So there's an opportunity for Zambian elected officials and staff to travel to Canada once we're out of the pandemic, and we would host a study tour here. There's also an opportunity throughout the program, once travel is safe, for those staff that are involved or elected officials involved to travel to Zambia as well. And that is just pending the schedule and the work that we do. Here is a general timeline. So essentially at this point, I've had one meeting with the group from FCM to learn about the fact that we're partnered with Edmonton, to understand the timeline. So in April and May of this year will be an onboarding period of time. So we'll be introduced to the project, a more robust understanding of the work that we'll be doing. And it's at that point that I'm hoping to have a clearer understanding of how many staff will we be able to provide this opportunity to, and then what process would we use to have those staff participate depending on the interest that's there. The Jordan project, it's been a bit more ad hoc. So I got involved, and then, then they wanted some support with emergency management. So we went to our emergency management staff, and just most recently, Shannon White from our solid waste area, has started working with them. So it's much more ad hoc. I anticipate that this project will be much more, I'm trying to think of the word, like planned in terms of opening the opportunities up to staff and elected officials, but that's forthcoming once I have a better idea of the work that we're doing. It is a 5-year project, so you can see that it goes all the way out to 2026, which is very exciting because very likely it means that we will be able to travel and people will have the opportunity to visit and learn from and support municipalities in Zambia. And that is my update at this time. So I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Glende. Council, any questions or comments? Councillor Anderson?
Ms. Glende, a number of years ago, I was director of an organization called the Community Forest Network, Community Forest for Africa Network. It was a British Columbia-based organization, and it had a project in Zambia, among other African countries. And why I mention this is that we have here in Squamish our own community forest endeavor. It's just getting off the ground, and it is a partnership with local Indigenous peoples. And this is also a feature of land tenure puzzles and resource management in Africa as well, from my experience in tuning into those projects. So I just put it to you that we might keep our ear to the ground as to whether there may be some relevance for exchange on forest resource management and community tenures. We have at least 3 professional foresters here in Squamish who have worked in Africa. And we also have our emerging organizational development. It's still in process for our own community forests, but there may be some aspects of that, organizational aspects, that may be of interest to share. So I just put it to you that perhaps we might keep our ear to the ground as to whether there's maybe some relevance for that type of endeavor here in Squamish for those folks in Zambia. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Any other questions or comments, Council? Ms. Glende, in the short term, how do we, or maybe not the short term, but how do we build that relationship with Edmonton? Like, I get that our relationship will be facilitated through FCM with Zambia, but like, do we just start saying, hey, Edmonton, how does that work?
Thank you for the question. We actually have an introductory meeting with Edmonton the end of March. So FCM is as well facilitating that cooperation. And then as we move forward, if I base it on how we've worked with Jordan, we were partnered with Sylvan Lake in Alberta, is that FCM brings both Canadian municipalities together to do the background work and then facilitates further work with Zambia. All of this to say is I am in the process of learning what this looks like, and we'll continue to keep council updated.
And then with including community partners, does that come towards the beginning, or once we have those sort of that task plan, as you say, sort of worked out and we see like who could join us in this conversation?
Thank you. Yes, I'm imagining it would be the latter. You know, as I wade into this and understand more of what's involved, the timing, what the tasks specifically are, and what expertise we can leverage and what agencies would make sense to partner with, I can see that coming in a few months or later on through the project.
And I know you gave us an update on the Jordan project and this one a little while ago in terms of an overview, but are staff now aware of PMI Will and what has their reaction been?
We haven't done an overarching update to all of staff yet. My preference would be to understand to what extent we can involve staff, because I'm optimistic that I'm going to have many staff that are interested. The staff that are aware are extraordinarily excited. So those that helped with the application, the core leadership team, you know, it's a unique and exciting opportunity that most people are quite excited about.
Thanks. Anything else, Council? Councillor Stoner?
I think your last response may have answered this question, but I'm curious if you have a sense of like how many staff might be involved in the project over time, or if that's just too early to tell.
Thank you. At this point, it's too early to tell. My preference would be to enable as many staff as want to be involved to do so, because it's such a great learning opportunity. It's a great retention tool. A lot of people, you know, find motivation with projects like this. That said, there's also management of how many people can be. So it's really too early to tell, but again, we'll keep you updated.
That's helpful. Thanks. And just a comment of thanks for bringing this forward and engaging our community in this project. I think not only is it exciting and important for us to share our knowledge, I think we learn a lot from these projects. And I think, as you mentioned, they are a huge asset in terms of employee retention, the opportunity to engage in this level of information sharing and exchange, I think has huge value for our community, for our staff, as well as the community in Zambia. And I'm excited about the fact that we're partnered with the city of Edmonton. They're also doing lots of cool things. So lots of opportunity to learn, and thanks again for your efforts here.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Glende. Do I need to receive that, Ms. Arthurs? Motion to receive? I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're on to item 10, our consent agenda. If there's anything in which you find yourself a conflict in the consent agenda or anything you'd like to pull, this is the time to do it. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. I'd like to pull item number 4, the letter from L. Brownbig concerning the Aboriginal Housing Management Association for further discussion.
We will bring that up in item 13. Anything else? Seeing none, would someone like to move the consent agenda? Moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor French. Any opposed? Motion carries. Under late items, number 11, we have some staff here, a letter of support request. And is it Mr. Pickett's? And Mr. Smith are here, so. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much for receiving this. We don't have a presentation at time, but we're welcome to answer questions.
Can you outline the request, what it's for? We don't have any documentation, Mr. Pickett, so
My apologies.
Yeah, thanks.
Through the mayor, we've decided to apply for an FCM Sustainability Award for our work with the Municipal Energy and Emissions Plan. So this is an award that we've decided to apply for. If we got it, we would present at the next FCM Sustainability Conference. I strongly believe that that this plan that we've created is very strong and very quantitatively rigorous, and we've done quite an effective job of implementing it into our ongoing actions. And I think a lot of other communities could learn from it and build upon it. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor French.
So if we provide a letter and the application is submitted and the award is granted, do we get anything above and beyond recognition, or is it simply recognition?
We need about $80 million for our flood hazard management plan. Go ahead, Mr. Pickett.
Through the chair, it is simply recognition.
I'm curious what more you were looking for, though. Any other questions? All right. So staff are requesting that we endorse the FCM award application and provide a letter of support. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Pengill. Any comments? I certainly think it's our energy and emissions plan is worth an award. So let's test the waters. You get bragging rights. That's what else you get, Councillor French. So recognition and bragging rights. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're moving on to item 12A, action requested. We have a number of letters here that correspondence from the Squamish Performing Arts Organizations be referred to the Director of Facilities Planning and Construction. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Or you're not seconding? You are. All right. Comments? Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I'll just note that this letter from the performing arts groups addresses not auditorium functions used by performing arts, that is in a performing arts center, a grand facility, but in studio, rehearsal, and instruction classes functions. And I all of us have received letters and made contact with groups that have been challenged for a long time. They're using facilities in the business park, hotel rooms, hotel meeting rooms, and they're all over the community, and the challenges are real. So I think we should applaud this self-organizing, if you like, of the number of performing arts groups and take up their offer of consultation. And I also note that Mr. Bragg, I believe, our Director of Facilities Construction, was part of a presentation that's referred to in the letter regarding a desired future engagement, desired on the part of staff, proposed to council at that time, future engagement with, among others, cultural groups. So I would endorse this motion that we refer it to our facilities manager. I note also that it's copied to Mr. Matt Gunn with our Garibaldi Estates neighborhood plan and our planning department. The Garibaldi Estates has 2 or 3 facilities that have been in use by these very groups. And so I just note that that already been copied to the planning department. So just endorsing the present motion.
I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a request from the Whistler Center for Sustainability, a council resolution supporting a 2022 UBCM grant application for the development of an assessment and action plan for the enhanced regional food security and resiliency in the Sea to Sky. Councilor Rice, you're moving that. Councilor French, seconding. Any comments? Councilor French?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just as the councillor appointed to the Squamish Food Policy Council, I see the importance of this work, and to get the work done, funding is needed. So I fully support the project and the application for the money to move the project ahead. And anything that we can do to promote food security, I think we should do, and supporting the Sea to Sky food recovery strategy and action plan, and those working on the action plan is just simply what we need to do. So I see this as an important investment in our future, and work on food security, support sustainability, local jobs, and economic gain. I support the motion.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 is correspondence from Kay Offsey about speed bumps in the neighborhood, that it be referred to the Director of Engineering for investigation response. Moved by Councillor Herford, second by Councillor Stoner. Any comments? Councillor Stoner?
Just briefly, this road was paved maybe a year and a half ago, and since then traffic has been moving very fast along it. I don't know if speed bumps are the answer, but if engineering could consider even just putting up one of those flashing signs in terms of indicating speed. It is a neighborhood way that often sees speeds much greater than 30 kilometers an hour.
Thank you very much. Any opposed? Motion carries. Correspondence from D. Anderson be referred to the Director of Engineering for investigation and response regarding Memcom Road improvements. Moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by me. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. And correspondence from M. Godge about BC Federation of Students Seconds Count campaign for council consideration. You can choose to action it, receive it. Councillor French,
Yeah, I'll move receipt.
seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. We're on item 13. Councillor Anderson, you pulled letter 4 from the consent agenda. You can deal with it here.
Thank you. This correspondence and the report that accompanies it on the Aboriginal or British Columbia Urban, Rural and Northern Indigenous Housing Strategy, very welcome report, full of interesting information for us. But one thing I'd like to observe is that there is no attention in this report, due to its scope, on the production of housing and on the opportunity and economic development opportunity, including for Squamish, for businesses and industries to evolve to produce this housing. We have in Squamish a number of companies involved in prefab house design and construction, and it is a sector which other local companies are hoping to expand into, including with Squamish Nation participation. Squamish Nation has an impressive track record in construction training, so I just will observe that there's one whole piece that is not addressed in this report, and that is the opportunity in construction and manufacturing of housing. And it's one that is relevant to Squamish. Otherwise, I'd like to move that this report be referred to the Squamish Housing Society for their information.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're on to item 14, approval of minutes. Recommended motion from the March 1st Committee of the Whole. The council received the memo from Facilities Planning and Construction as presented on March 1 Committee of the Whole as an update on the various projects under the REFMP and other works under the Facilities Planning and Constructions platform. By Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Pettengill. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. Another motion from that date that the District of Squamish establish a library provision based on the conditions established and endorsed by the Squamish Public Library Board of Directors. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Race. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. Under item 2, we have recommended motions from the March 8th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting that the District of Squamish requests staff to incorporate feedback from the council as received March 8th at the Committee of the Whole meeting into the 2022 Squamish Transit Future Action Plan, and that staff bring back the Transit Future Action Plan for council consideration to a future Committee of the Whole meeting. And that council directs staff to pursue transit partnership agreements with businesses in the South Squamish Parks area to support Route 5 and free summer weekend transit. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. Then dealing with the Upper Finch Drive Committee of the Whole from March 8th. Someone want to move that motion? By Councillor Herford, second by Councillor French. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then we had that council received the 40480 Tantalus Road rezoning report dated March 8th and provide feedback on the following items. One was about building heights, one was about massing, and many, many others that are bulleted there in our meeting, and that prior to consideration of first reading, a public information meeting be held. By Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes, Council? We have nothing under item 16, nothing under 17 this evening. We have no unscheduled public attendance. Anybody online for open question period? No. Any council or staff announcements? Councillor Herford?
Thank you.
Hold on. Ms. Glende?
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. I believe Mr. Buxton has something to add.
Okay. So Councillor Herford and then Ms. Buxton.
Okay. On Saturday night, I was lucky enough to attend an event at Eagle Eye Theatre, which had Alex Badger, Kat Madden, and why am I forgetting the last one? Anyways, it was amazing. Live music is back. It was a full theater. And I know that this is more a shout out to the arts, the performing arts, and they're promoting also. There's Between Shifts Theater has an upcoming event, and just these events will start rolling out. And it was great to see everybody's smiling faces out. And Will Ross, I was just too blown away by Will every time with his sampling. I can't even focus on what's happening, but thank you for that, Councillor Pettengill. So, I just encourage everyone to get out there and enjoy the arts. And I know that they particularly need our support right now, but there is a huge swell of sort of a need to be out with our community safely and responsibly, of course. But get out there. There's great art happening, and seek it out, and you won't be disappointed. Thank you.
Okay, were there other announcements? Councilor Pettengill?
Yeah, a couple things. Stick with the theme a little bit. On Saturday and then Sunday, I went to the end of the Howe Sound Performing Arts Association Music Fest. And it is the culmination of a week-long, very intense bunch of talented, really skilled, mostly youth. There's a few adults on the Sunday. But just the talent, the musical talent in our town is really amazing. There was an adjudicator who came from Alberta who provided just really wonderful feedback. So I sat there the whole time just absorbing everything. It was really cool. And so thank you so much for the Howe Sound Performing Arts Association for putting it on. It's something they do every year. And it's the first time I'd actually got to go in person. And it's really quite something to see. And actually saw a fantastic performance as well from a member of the Mayor's Youth Council, which was really cool. I wasn't expecting that. I think last week we saw a screening of Honor Thy Mother, which talked about the Indonesian or Indopino heritage of Squamish Nation members or some people in the Squamish Nation community. It's a story about going to Bainbridge Island in the States and picking strawberries and just everything that happened around that. I'm not doing it justice. It's really worth seeing. It was a really impactful event. Had some Squamish Nation elders there speaking to some of their experiences with it. Gwen Harry was featured in the film, so it was a really cool event up at Quest. Two other things I want to touch on quickly. I had the privilege to facilitate a discussion with the mayor of Lytton, Jan Polderman, and Spencer Coyne, Mayor Spencer Coyne, the mayor of Princeton, talking about their experiences with the natural disasters, the flooding and the fires, where their communities are, what they've learned. Just a couple highlights, just highlighted how critical EOCs are. So thank you to our Emergency Operations Center, who's been very busy this last year as well. Underscored the importance of regional collaboration and reminded that we need to plan for our neighbors' emergencies, not just our own. Talked about how we literally may have only minutes to act, and reminded us that as local governments, we really need to help the province understand that local boots on the ground and local knowledge is critical for an effective response. There's a few other things, but I'll leave those highlights, but really, really impactful. It's one thing to see these mayors on the news, but to be in a small group discussion, yeah, it was, you could really feel and hear and see the emotion. And their communities are still struggling, and the care for their communities is really quite inspiring. But it was a tough discussion as well. And then the following day, Mr. Pickett's, who we just saw, led a presentation talking about our community climate action plan. And I think a lot of the other communities really got a lot out of it. And I love when Ian and others talk about our plan, because it is something that a lot of communities are talking about. Squamish is held in high regard. And so it's something we should be proud of, and something Ian should be proud of as well. So thank you for that.
I brought back a copy of Honor Thy Mother, so the district has a copy if anyone on council is interested. Mr. Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a brief update with respect to phase 3 of the zoning bylaw, which Council, I believe, adopted at the last council meeting. In getting to that point, it was a bunch of what we called administrative amendments, one of which was a number of rear yard setbacks in multifamily residential areas, which Council pulled out of that bylaw. We've looked at that from the community planning workload, looked at the response we got from that, looked at the need to actually do it. And there is no bandwidth in the community planning department this year to sort of pick that up. And as one of my staff members eloquently describes it, is the juice isn't worth the squeeze on that one, quite honestly. So there isn't any intent to actually proceed with bringing that back this year. It's something we could in subsequent years, but there is no plan to bring that issue back before council.
Thank you, Mr. Buxton. All right. Anything else under council staff announcements? All right. Seeing none, we do have to finish our special meeting after this, so we need to terminate this meeting, and we will reopen the other one under the closed agenda link. So motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Herford. There was a lag there. It's weird. Usually happens on the computer, but it happened in council chambers. Any opposed? Motion carries. So let's see. It is, what time is it? Let's reconvene at 8:10 on the closed link. It's 8:04 according to my watch.